Yo, yo, yo! It's your girl Rose Gold, and you are tuned in to another episode of Heartbreak Hill podcast. For those of you who are watching and listening, I have a wonderful, fabulous guest, Miss Philantha. She is the founder and the writer of the Good and Rooted parenting firm. She has been changing life drastically with these programs, and I'm honored to have her on the show today. Philantha, welcome.
Hello. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I cannot wait for our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time to our conversation, Philantha and I have known each other for many years. We did go to high school together. So while we weren't a part of each other's immediate circle, I have been knowing Philantha for many years. So proud of the things that she has been able to accomplish. And why don't we just go ahead and get right in? So the Good and Rooted. Tell us about the Good and Rooted and what that is and how you got started with it.
Yeah, so the Good and Rooted Parent is an online course. It's a two-part. So there's mothering the mother, and then the second part is like raising your child capable, autonomous, and just amazing child. And that goes from, newborn all the way through toddler years, just because the first 3 years are so crucial. And though they don't remember much unconsciously, it sets them up for their whole lifetime. And this idea kind of came from, my lifestyle and how I kind of just grew up from where people least expect me to come up from the way that I talk, the way that I present myself, to the way that I just go after my goals in life. And so I kind of took a second to kind of just say, I'm a huge introvert. I love the one-on-one. I love meeting new moms. But at the same time, it is so exhausting, and it takes away from my own emotional mental health to physically stay here with my family and raise my daughter the way I'd like to, without projecting, without, having an inner dialogue about how I'm raising my family, and just giving back confidence into my family. So I started off as one-on-ones, and then I was like, you know what, this information should be more accessible and more affordable to everyone. So it's everything I know from all of my own research as a mom who cares and wants to break lots of generational ceilings, and break a lot of emotional stigmas and things that weren't our choice as children, but now as adults, you get to make that choice. And I think people of minorities like you and me, we don't know what that looks like, or nor have we seen that done representatively in a positive light, without it just mimicking, like a whiteness counterpart. And so this online program is always accessible to anybody at any point. Once you buy it, it's yours. It's for a lifetime. You can see it as often as you want. If you need to review it, you definitely can. If it's too much for one phase versus the other phase, you take your time. It is yours. And you have all my contact information. So I'm there if you ever have any questions, concerns, or want to go more. I'm here to help more moms like us really achieve more of that American dream that our parents and ancestors have fought so hard for.
Right. Absolutely. And so there are lots of parenting forums out there. There are lots of online courses for parents. But yours is one of the first that I've seen that has the mothering the mother part of it. So to me, when I hear that, that's before we even approach the parenting aspect, it's healing the inner mother. Can you tell me more about how did you come up with that piece of your program, and why is that first, and why is that important?
When I first had my daughter, well, let's go back a little bit. My whole life, I was brought up to be a wife, to be a submissive wife, to be fall under that patriarchal umbrella and just serve my husband and my family. This sounds like it's a very developing country phenomenon, but it's very real here.
Exactly.
I will add to all your followers, I'm homegrown Minnesotan, so this is my home. I don't know anything else. The idea of mothering your mother, everybody has that. Every woman has that. Your mother isn't just the person who birthed you. It's the one who acted as your protector, who should have been your protector. It's your school. It's your coaches. It's your anybody that you looked up to and thought that you could be that person and said, I believed in you. that's who your mother is. And I notice a lot of my friends who are not moms kind of shy away from that because they're like, oh no, I can't ever be a mom. Like, that's just not me. And I'm like, but you had one.
Right.
Like, but you become one. You've
Right.
had, if you didn't have your mother, you became the mother for you. So for you to deny that the mother wound isn't there, I think that's a little bit more telling that it is very there and that you have always been your own mother. And it starts with you. And you're right. I got really frustrated at all of these parenting courses and products out there because it's like, you can't just focus on the children. The children aren't to blame.
Right.
It's you, honey. You got to work on you. And that's okay. That could be protected. That could be safe. That is a grounding area that you should feel comfortable to. And then I realized, the reason why that can't happen is because they don't even know what the heck that looks like.
Right.
It's been such a protected, wall that you don't even know how to break it because you've been in such a survivor mode. The mother in you kept you so safe that the real mother that has presented in your life, there's such a disconnect. Your brain doesn't know how to make that connection. So when you first have your child, that's why postpartum depression and anxiety goes untreated. It's a full circle phenomenon. So you can't say that this is a parenting course and just teach the children all these amazing things if you're not willing to do that work for you. Because that's kind of where the work all started a year ago when moms were coming to me and were like, my kids are like this, they're horrible, they're this. They're selfish, they're so entitled. Look, she always wants to look herself in the mirror. And I'm like, she should.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing that she should. I mean,
Right.
Why don't you want to look in the mirror? Why are you sad that your daughter is so audacious about why she loves her body? That's a good thing. Like, let's talk about you. I think that's very telling. Like, let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I kind of strayed away from the question, but
No,
hopefully that answered it in a very...
No, you did. You answered it very good because you explained, what I was trying to get at, and you explained very well, is the importance of starting there. And I think that a lot of us parents, we think that, if I could just make this perfect kid, then, it'll be all right. And then we have the projecting, we have these generational traumas, we have all these things that doesn't get dealt with, but I'm just going to focus on being the best parent I can be and raising my child. And it doesn't work that way. So I guess, when you are starting this program, I know that your husband is in the service. We thank your husband for his service. And you're married to a Black man in the service. When did that, as he deploys and things like that, what part of that affected your parenting, from both him having a biracial child and then him being deployed at times where you are a single mom at those times?
It was a good distraction. Many people asked how they can help me during that time, and it's more so, how can I help you? I have all the time in the world right now. How can I help you? Like, as much as I started the deployment journey, what I didn't realize was the grief that was going to come to it, just because I've had so much grief in my life, like little g, not big G. And the thing is, what helped me cope with all of that was, no one can take away the pain and the loneliness that comes at night. But if I can make somebody else feel more valid and more heard in their own struggles as first-time moms, because I was only a year out, you learn so much from being pregnant and then your first year of parenting. And I just was like, here's a book reference, like, here's this, or I didn't give my opinions. I just, a lot of times when you're in such a vulnerable state, especially as a minority mom, there's so many pressures. Let's not even talk about cultural, stigmas. Let's not even talk about, postpartum loss. Let's not even talk about all of that. It's a lot of it gets pushed out of the narrative. And so when my husband was gone, it was like, how can I help you? Like, do you need, like, oh, you're trying to breastfeed? How can I help you? Like, sure, show me your boob. Let me show you, like, let me see what the latch looks like. No judgment from woman to woman. Like, you're trying to feed your child. Let me show you if that's a good latch or not. Here's what I know from my lactation services that I went to, or, these services are free if you can't afford, or if you do want to, pay something, like, this is where you could go. I really just found myself in an advocacy role for all moms, especially moms of color, because the choices I made when I became pregnant, when I got married, was very much in a resourceful mindset.
Okay.
And I just was really upset that that's not something that most minorities seek out,
Sure.
because for so much of their life, they've gone through so much trauma that you can't get out of the survivor mode, even if you tried.
Sure. Absolutely. And getting out of that kind of trauma mode and out of that survivor mode and actually living a life is something that we're definitely going to touch on. But I want to ask you, as you are raising a biracial child,
Mm-hmm.
how does that fact alone implement how you parent?
I'm very protective.
Mm,
Mama bear mode is on 100%. And I think I used to care about it until I was like, nah, my daughter can't speak up for herself at all until she's
sure.
18. Like the person that she's seeing, the person I see 24/7, she sees me, and
Right.
she sees me in a good light. And she sees me as her protector, as someone who's supposed to look out for her. So why would I go out of my way to be a disservice to that?
Right.
Um, and I think it started when my daughter had like jaundice, and the
Mm,
day that we are supposed to leave the hospital, when they found out that she had jaundice, they never came in and told us that she was put in NICU. We were just left in my maternity room, and no one came. No one came for 4 hours
mm,
when we were supposed to release 20 minutes after all of her testing. And so it got to a point where, do I stay my submissive Asian conditioning and just assume that the hospital, these experts, are supposed to know like where my kid is? Or do I go out of that little shell and say, where's my kid that I
right.
birthed, that I carried, that I just met 24 hours ago? Where is she? And it took a second to kind of just say, okay, all right, I kind of have to, like, I was supposed to go home.
Mm.
And so I don't know if that answers the questions again, but
Yeah, you
yeah,
did.
it takes moments like that to kind of just, I think as a first time mom who's trying to get out of that trauma mode, like there's something about that mama instinct that just
Mm.
kicks in, and you
Yeah,
can't really doubt that. So when
right.
I see other moms who doubt that, I'm like, I
Right.
really highly doubt that. I think you just have never like acknowledged it as that. Um,
Exactly.
so after that, I was like, no, I don't really care what anybody has to say about my kid. I know I'm protecting her. I know I'm advocating on her well-being. I know that the process I'm doing is for my own well-being and my daughter's. I don't care if you're mom. I don't care if you're mother-in-law. I don't care if you're
Right.
auntie. I don't care if you've had 10
Right.
children. I don't care if you're grandma. You don't know my child. You don't know me. You weren't in my birth canal.
Right.
You weren't there. Um, so I kind of just take it back to that, and you can call that as audacious as possible, but that's also just facts. Like, I
Right.
think in Minnesota, they've gotten so used to passive aggressive as nice that
Mm.
when you speak up, it's aggressive.
Right.
When speaking out is just, you're just speaking out what's been wronged.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up that moment where you had to make a decision. Am I going to follow my social conditioning, what I grew up to be? Am I going to step outside of that? And I totally agree. There's something about being a mother that can make you step outside of those social norms or cultural norms, that you have been taught. So tell me, kind of like I was telling the listeners, we were in high school together. And 15, 16, some of our friends were already married. They were already, starting families, things like that. And people think that that's such a third world thing, and it's not. It's very much cultural and present here in the United States as well. And I know that as we have talked before, a lot of that was part of kind of the doctrine for your culture as well. When did you decide that you were going to go against the cultural norms? You're college educated, you are married, you have your child, your own family, your own home, but you're doing it completely opposite of how you were taught to. When did you decide that you were going to break out of that cultural norm or stigma of the Asian mother and wife?
When I realized that white kids are doing the same thing, and they never got punished for it.
Mm,
They never were in gangs. They never got caught by the police, and they were just being kids. I
mm-hmm.
saw how their parents treated them. Like, how great is it that you're in like after school programs? How great is it that you're actually advocating for yourself? How great is it that you're actually leadership skills? And then seeing that day to day, and then seeing, my Black friends and how how well of community they were, but how much suffrage they took in that as confidence. And I was like, that's kind of it, but not quite. You know, I grew up in the Frog Town, the ghetto-ness, you know, boots with the fur and everything too. Like I grew up there. Like that is my community. And going home, there's a lot that happened there too. I was like, this can't be it. Like, this can't be it. This cannot be it. Like, I know what I'm doing is not wrong. Like, kids go to student council and get picked up by 4 or 5 o'clock and they're fine. So why am I being punished just because the sun went down when I'm waiting on the school steps for my mom to come pick me up and when she forgot, you know? And now I have to figure out how to find $2.75 to go home, and hopefully knowing by that it's gonna be 8 o'clock. So did I really do something wrong? No, unfortunately I just had to take in, you know, the worst of it, even though my mom, you know, she's limited in the way she came over, in the ways that she's gone through. It's just like, I didn't have that compassion then. And I was a very naughty child. And I hate that word because I was trying so hard to just be a good kid.
You just wanted to be good. And in hopes of being good, maybe you could perhaps have a different life and be acknowledged for that goodness and see things treated differently. How did you see women being treated as you were growing up as a child? Because you're second, I know that your parents came over here as first generation Hmong immigrants, correct?
Yep.
So you're second generation here as a family. And I know that a lot of those old cultural norms, which you've totally busted and broken with your own family, but a lot of that came over with your parents. What kind of roles did you see, just for the listeners who are tuning in, did you see women being in growing up, or how were they treated?
The best way I can say it is that when you think about third world countries, think about the white Christians who are doing these wonderful projects down there, and that they're looking upon these as like they're immigrants and, you know, the less than of people, and they're just like less than people, I guess. That's how I grew up thinking women were. Like, there was no liberty. Like, they're growing up, you and I went to high school, my sisters and I never had a sex talk. Though we were dating, though that they were partying, and though they were in college, even my brothers, like, we never had conversations that was anything remotely emotionally of intelligence, or just conversations that you would have when you think of an American life. My mom, it's really funny though, I have to say this, my mom was a single parent for almost 10 years after my dad had passed, and I only grew up of how abusive my dad was, like physically, and that was normalized because my dad had 3 wives, and he physically abused them, and emotionally neglected them. And so when my mom saw all of that, like, she was like, yeah, you know, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually raise my kids. I'm going to do everything I can. She's a hard worker. She's so smart. She owns her own business. She's amazing until she wasn't. You know, she got married to a very patriarchal, low-casted Hmong man. And that changed everything about her ideologies, how women should be. And I was in a pivotal part in my life as a young woman to witness such a strong, independent, powerful, almost superhuman type mom, and then go to a very low, submissive. When I say submissive, like, it's exactly what all of you listeners are thinking, like, submissive, like your voice doesn't matter. You shut up any instinct. You don't rebuttal. You blame your children. You whatever problems you have, your children are to be blamed. It's their fault that they, you know, effed up your life. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear, but it's everything that is toxic. And the thing is, I'm the only one in my family through all of that has been able to say, like, maybe we should call the cops. We call the cops, right? Do we not call the cops? Like, I don't think that this is okay. Is it okay? And it didn't help that we didn't have cell phones, like, in high school. All 3 of us shared one cell phone. Like, the accessibility wasn't there. So seeing all of that, it's just, it's still a wondering question to me, I think. And I think that goes back to like the mother wound.
Sure.
Everybody, the idea of what a mother should be is within every single mom and every
Right.
single woman, whether you have children or not.
Hmm. Absolutely, Philantha. And I think that is a profound story. And I guess my last question in regards to that growing up is how did it feel, or what did you feel when you seen your mom? Because obviously you were around when your father passed. Sorry for that, by the way. Have our condolences with that. And you seen her be independent, and you see her do her thing, and then all of a sudden, she turns into this submissive person that you. How did that affect you mentally, as far as your identity as a woman and a wife? Were you confused? Did you feel like you had to pick kind of which person you wanted to be, or how did that affect you mentally to see that?
I think it kickstarted my natural humanistic survivor mode. I
Mm,
don't remember much of it. I really don't. I
sure.
really remember a lot of the trauma, the big moments. But
Hmm.
you have to understand that's my brain trying to keep myself safe.
Sure.
So from
Absolutely.
14 till like 20, I just remember being on the run. Like I was never physically running, but
Sure.
everything I was doing was on the run. So I think when you and I had this first conversation, you're like, I've always seen, like, you always advocated, you always
Yeah.
spoke up, like, for the good people. Like, you had good thoughts. Like, you were, like, we thought you were gonna be a lawyer. Like you knew what you were talking about, and you weren't gonna back down. You weren't dumb either. Like, you knew what you're
Listen.
talking.
For
And I was like,
sure.
you're like, you're always like, yeah, it may have just been like a fun school activity, but you were, it was like you were on trial.
Yes.
Um,
Because I
and
don't remember in high school, not to cut you off, I'm so sorry, but I just
no,
don't
go right ahead.
remember. I can remember you always having a voice. You know what I mean? Like, you were not, the person that would just hear people say things about, stigmas about Hmong culture that wasn't true and just be quiet. I can remember distinctly like you speaking up. You know what I mean? So just to hear kind of that mind frame, I would have never, you were not the, you know, submissive Asian girl who didn't have a voice. You were not that at all. You know what I mean? So I just,
Yeah.
I just applaud you for, I don't want to say hiding it so well, but I want to say that I applaud you for still being able to bloom, even though you weren't in an environment that supported that blooming. You definitely did bloom from high school to right now. Like, you're always giving me these gems and always speaking up about these real things that I just really appreciate. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to,
No,
I
you're
had to say
good.
that.
Yeah, no, that means everything. It means everything. I've watched you too, so I love everything you're doing. I always go, what would Tira do? Like, she's in LA right now. Why am I not in LA? Like, let me be in LA. Like, I want to get paid too. But like, to go back to the point, like, yeah, no, I hit it really well. But the things, I didn't even know that I consciously was hiding it. I think
Sure.
I was a kid who was in a lot of pain and a lot of unmeasured grief that no kid should ever have to go through. And I
Sure.
think it was me calling for help. Like,
Mm,
with my own years of therapy, like, it was me calling for help and nobody helped me. And
sure.
everybody just kept saying, like, keep going, you're so great. But I'm like, what am I great at? What am I doing
Right.
that's amazing? What is it about the whole thing that me speaking up is great? Because to me, it was just, I was just trying to survive.
Right.
And I didn't realize it was seen as like courageous or being
Right.
out there or trying to break from this mold that I was in. Like, I was just like, that's home and this is school. Like, my
Right.
brain, when I say I went to survivor mode, it
Sure.
compartmentalized everything to a fault. And it
Right.
went into my type A
Mhm.
personality. It went into like my expectations of others. And it like made me come off as like, the B word. When I'm like, but how? Like, I'm
Right.
just surviving.
Mm.
So yeah, it's really, it's such a like fast forward. It just feels like I watch my life and fast forward every time I think about it, because I truly don't, I don't think my brain wants to be there. Like, I
Right.
think it's just like, your life is really good now. Like, let's
Yeah.
focus on now. Let's not have
Exactly.
anxiety now. Like, every
Yeah.
time I think about the past, you just have an anxiety back. And then you
Right.
just go into depression mode for like days and months. So
Right.
like, let's not do that.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that's very important, after you acknowledge the past, to be as present as possible to prevent those anxiety and depression feelings, because you can't get stuck in the past and get stuck in those feelings. So that's for sure. So you grow up in this mold. You grow up this way. You grow up seeing these things. and you meet your husband, who is a Black man, has a fully Black father, white mother. And how did, because you guys, you're not the, submissive, what you guys are a great team, is what I'm trying to say. So how did you transition as his wife? Because he doesn't allow you to live in servitude at all. So how,
Well, it's really funny. Well, it's funny you say that because in a way he kind of did, because I was like, no, this is how I want to be. I want to be this kind of wife for you. I want to be this kind of girl for you. Like, I make it easy for you to love me. Like, I know I'm great. I know I'm amazing. Because I worked hard on it. So I know you're not going to cheat on me because I know I'm amazing. I know I've got my things together. I'm working 3 jobs, working full time. I'm good. Like, I know you want this. And that's what kind of looks like when you're in a trauma mode and you don't get help because you've never had to learn those skills, nor were provided that. I'm just going to add that note. So my husband, he came, yes, he's half Black, half white. And I think he's just very privileged in that mindset because his mom refuses to admit that because he's Black, he will always be seen as less than of a white man. And he, growing up, that's his normalcy. And then his dad is like the whitest Black man you've ever met. Like everybody says that because he goes canoeing. He serves on like, Black Afro, where I don't know if you know about that. It's like getting Black people to go swimming and canoeing and kayaking and all of these outdoor events. He has bees in his backyard. He makes honey. Like he is the whitest Black guy. And so Parker, when it comes to that, he's had some identity manly issues too. Like he's had to work out, and that wasn't even uncovered until we had my daughter too, until he was like, I'm having a girl. Like I really, don't want to uncover all of this like masculinity that isn't exactly healthy either. Like where did this all start? And I'm like, high five, honey, like let's do this work together. You do you and I do me. But through our dating life, I think he just was always like, that is so weird. Like, why do you have to go home at 7? Like, I'm like, are you sure you want to date me? Like, you can have any other white or Black girl, Mexican girl, but do you understand, us minorities are on strict rules. Like, why do you want to date me? Mind you, we've known each other since junior high and started dating in high school until now. So that's almost like 10, 11 years, right? I don't. Okay.
Absolutely.
In case he listens. And so he's always like, that's weird. Like, he's always just taking like a third like perspective, like never judge you, but just like, okay, well, I guess I can drop you off at 4:00. You just got here at 3. And like it's
kind of rolled with it.
Yeah, and he's like, that's fine, I'll see you the next day. Or when we were sharing cell phones, he's like, should I even like text you? Like, should I be sexting you? Should I be flirting? Like, what is that? I don't want your sisters to see that. And I was like, well, I don't either. So it was just like we were kids, and he found some humility in it, and he humanized that aspect for me because I didn't really have that. If he was here, he'd say he was my Prince Charming and I was Cinderella. He is very proud of saying that because he's like, I saved you. That was some weird stuff you went through, like I was the American boy. I showed you the American life. And I'm like, all right, honey. So like with him, growing up half white, half Black, he also weirdly had a lot of Asian, Hispanic, like he was very well blended in his own society too, and like well socialized. And so he was like, the thing is, he was able to see the struggles that I went through and was able to help me find that compassion as a woman, and as as in an intimate way as well too, and not disrespect me in that way, but also not let me live up to those awful standards, because he's like, that's just weird. Like, as toxic as my masculinity is, I can't allow you to do that. That's weird. Like, you're not going to carry everything in by yourself. You're not going to be a homemaker. You're not like, cool, you can cook, I can clean, kind of thing. But let's not get too crazy here, honey. Like, you're not your parents who came over in survivor mode, and you're doing the work to get better. Like, you are my rock, kind of thing. So
absolutely wonderful. And I love that. I think that is what marriage is about, bringing out the best in each other and recognizing that maybe the way that we grew up and just maybe the way that we were taught may not be correct, and it may not serve us as who we grow into now. You know, I think a lot of times our parents and how they grew up, maybe it served them at that time. Maybe that's who they needed to be at that time. But we always have that option to break those generational molds and those generational traumas. And that's what I love so much about your program. So if people want to get interested and started with your program, Philantha, tell me where they can go.
They can go to thegoodandrooted.teachable.com. And that's all
Perfect.
together.
Absolutely. And I will have a link for those of you who are just tuning in. I will have a link directly to her website in our description box here. And if, for those of you who want to follow her on social media, she has lovely content about everyday life and family life on Instagram, Living Philantha. I will also have that link in our description as well. Now, before we get ready to go, Philantha, I just want to ask you, for the first time mother out there, who may or may not be experiencing her single momness for the first time. Or maybe she has a partner and this is just all still new. What would be one piece of advice you would give to her to hold near and dear to her heart through this first time mom journey?
You're not alone. Reach out to everybody who says that they are there for you. Believe them. They truly are trying to help you.
Absolutely wonderful. And there you have it, Heartbreakers. Listen, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you decided to be here with me. Go ahead and check us out, heartbreakhealpodcast.com. While you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media, Heartbreak Heal Podcast on all platforms. We are available to be listened to anywhere you get your podcast. Philantha, we'll catch up after this. Thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, all love, no judgment.